A shocking and disturbing false claim from President Trump today, tweeting, quote, 3,000 people did not die in the two hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. When I left the island after the storm had hit, they had anywhere from 6 to 18 deaths. As time went by, it did not go up by much. Then a long time later, they started to report really large numbers like 3,000. This was done by the Democrats in order to make me look as bad as possible, unquote. The president of the United States there, with no evidence, denying the official government death toll of approximately 2,975 dead Americans from the hurricanes of 2017 and their aftermath, and casting blame, again, with zero evidence for this conspiracy theory, on his political rivals supposedly plotting against him. Some facts here. People die in the wake of storms. They die because of the loss of electricity, because of downed power lines, because of contaminated water, falling debris. The governor of Puerto Rico raised the death toll after commissioning an independent study by George Washington University, working with the University of Puerto Rico, one that analyzed statistical death patterns. 3,000 people did not die, the president said, suggesting the number is really closer to 18. That must be great relief to the Puerto Ricans who earlier this year put in front of their capital thousands of pairs of shoes bearing the names of those who had died as a result of the storm and its aftermath. A sight that is heartbreaking to most of us, I should say. The president, of course, suggesting this is all bogus. Even Republican allies of President Trump today took issue with his comments. Florida Governor Rick Scott tweeting, "I disagree with the president. An independent study said thousands were lost," and Governor Rosello agreed. The campaign of Florida's Republican gubernatorial candidate, Ron DeSantis, a major Trump supporter, said DeSantis, quote, "doesn't believe any loss of life has been inflated." Let's get right to CNN's Leila Santiago in San Juan. And Leila, how are folks on the ground reacting to President Trump's comments?
Jake, the words I've heard today, shocking, appalling. One gentleman told me that it ruined his day, and the head of the Funeral Homes Association told me President Trump should accept what government numbers and studies prove.
3,000 people did not die here. That number, just bad politics, false claims from President Trump that are hard to hear for Puerto Ricans still recovering from Hurricane Maria last year.
The victims nor the people of Puerto Rico deserve to have their pain questioned. This has been a long process. As you know, we didn't have a lot of the resources.
After the storm, Chef Jose Andres served hundreds of thousands of meals to shell-shocked communities. He says the president should be ashamed.
His tweet only shows you his lack of empathy. I don't think he can speak because he didn't walk around the streets of Puerto Rico, showing up in San Juan and going to the places that were okay. This is not trying to understand the reality.
What is your death count?
True, 2 weeks after the storm, the death toll was low.
16 people certified. 16 people versus in the thousands.
But a new study out of George Washington University found that 2,975 people in Puerto Rico died after Hurricane Maria, a number acknowledged by the Puerto Rican government.
And I saw him get on the floor, and I couldn't do nothing to help him.
Miriam Rodriguez's husband, Natalio, relied on this machine to breathe. When they lost power, he lost air.
That wasn't a normal death. That wasn't.
Natalio's family is just one of many who believe Hurricane Maria contributed to their loss, the kind of losses Trump now says has been fabricated for political gain.
And Jake, this week I was in Utuado. The interior part of the island really hit hard by Hurricane Maria. The emergency management director there told me he believes at least 95 deaths came out of that municipality. And he said that is what President Trump should have seen. The interior part of the island, the area where still today roads are not suffice for buses to get to children and take them to school. The conditions that many believe led to these deaths.
All right, Leila Santiago, as always, on the story in Puerto Rico. Thank you so much. Let's talk about this with our experts. Ana Navarro, your reaction to President Trump's tweet.
How stupid, how tone deaf, how surreal, how insensitive, how offensive to the relatives of the 3,000 people who died in Puerto Rico. Just, how wrong in every single way, morally, politically. I mean, how can this be coming from the President of the United States? And frankly, he's doing so much harm, not only to, as we're in the midst of hurricane preparation and dealing with a hurricane, he's doing harm even to his political allies in Florida. There is a reason why two people who are very close to Donald Trump, Rick Scott, who's running for U.S. Senate, and Ron DeSantis, who's running for governor, came out immediately today to distance themselves from this. There are Puerto Ricans who've moved to Florida, who could actually make or break statewide elections in Florida in 2018. And I hope all those Puerto Ricans and all those people who know Puerto Ricans in Florida or who like Puerto Ricans or who are mad as hell at this tweet, remember that the deadline to register to vote in Florida, if you moved, is October 9th. Just do it.
What do you make of this?
Yeah, so look, 3,000 people are clearly dead, right? And what they're dead from, I think, is what the president is taking issue from, right? So people, I think people for political gain and for whatever reason. Look, I've read the Milliken report. I've read the GAO reports on this tragedy, and it was a disaster of an epic scale. So the people died. When the president was there, I think the disconnect in his mind is when he left, 20, 30, 40 people dead. The Milliken report takes a longitudinal study and looks 6 months. The GAO report, interestingly, if I was the president, what he should have tweeted out was, and let me just read this to you because it's very interesting. He could stand on this alone. The GAO report on Maria says FEMA efforts in Puerto Rico alone were the largest and longest single response in the history of FEMA. FEMA's response in Puerto Rico is almost 3 times bigger than that of Harvey, Irma, and the wildfires combined. So the president should have said, despite our doing our best efforts, we can do better, and we will do better.
But that's not what he said, of course.
But he should say, I mean, he's got the facts behind him here to say, we did our best. We responded as hard as we could. And yet, it still wasn't enough. We'll do better.
I don't know how much he's interested in facts, to be honest. He tweeted, if a person died for any reason like old age, just add them onto the list. The idea being that these numbers were inflated. If somebody just died of old age, they were just put on this list. But the study accounted for that, as you know, because you read it. Yep. To put the study in a simplified version, experts say they would normally expect to see 13,633 deaths during that time period for any reason, including old age, from September to February, if Hurricane Maria had never hit. But over that time span, there were 16,608 deaths. The difference, approximately 3,000 deaths. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's misrepresenting the science here.
He's wrong on the facts. He's also wrong. The studies are done by academics, not the Democratic Party. So that's another problem with what he tweeted today as well. The question for me is, why? This is a day where we should be focused on the people who are going to be affected by the hurricanes today. And it's him talking about himself a lot and a lack of empathy and a sort of self-absorption we've seen a lot the last 2 years.
But, and let's remind people the president's what his message is to his base voters about facts and what they're supposed to believe when it comes to what we represent in terms of our reports on the government of Puerto Rico commissioning the study and their numbers versus what he says. Take a listen.
Stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news. I mean, I saw a piece on NBC today.
So here's the thing. Because he's attacking this number, now we're talking about the death toll in Puerto Rico, and that death toll is higher than Hurricane Katrina. So he can say whatever he wants to say, and his base will believe whatever they want to believe. But at the end of the day, the people watching the show right now will hear for the second time the death toll from Hurricane Maria during President Trump's reign was higher than the death toll from Hurricane Katrina during President Bush's reign. And I'll come to you in a second.
Well, because his only focus, and this has been this way since the day he took office, is on his base. That's all he seems to care about, is what his base thinks about him. And he knows that his base is not watching us right now. They're watching Fox News. And over in Fox News, the Puerto Rico never happened. I mean, it's true. It's an alternative universe. So they're never going to hear about this. They get all their information from Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, and Donald Trump's Twitter feed. That is literally it. And so it's this alternative reality. Now, how that's going to help him electorally, because there are actually other people who vote beyond his base, I think that that's going to end up being a problem for him.
I mean, look, I'm not making an apology for. I'm trying to explain what I think is happening here, right? So, with the president's a counterpuncher, we know that, and he sees these facts. He sees people blaming him for these 3,000 deaths, and I think what he's trying to get across is the fact that and Anna knows this, and you all know this to be true, that Puerto Rico was in not great shape before this, right?
True.
The Puerto Rican Electric Power Authority was bankrupt. They had lost 30% of the workforce from 2012 to 2015. They're down 30,000 employees. 70% of Puerto Ricans didn't have clean drinking water according to 1974 clean drinking water standards. The hurricane before this had knocked out 80,000 households, didn't have electricity when Maria showed up. And when this hurricane came, knocked down 80% of telephone poles, electricity was out. It was a catastrophic scale like no one's seen.
David, precisely because everything you just said is true, precisely because we knew Puerto Rico was in such bad shape financially, infrastructure, electric grid-wise, it required more preparation. It required more help. And that is where the federal government and the Puerto Rican government
It's a failure. It's a failure on multiple levels.
The Puerto Rican people were failed by all levels of government, not just the federal government. But you cannot compare. The facts are facts. When you take a look at the way the federal government, FEMA, reacted to Harvey in Texas and Irma in Florida, and I was in Florida, and then you see that within the same 9 days, it was millions and millions and millions more meals in the first 9 days to Texas and Irma.
I'm basing this in the GAO report.
It was millions and millions of
Not
more
according
tarps.
to the GAO report.
Right, but FEMA did acknowledge in their after-action report that they were underprepared, that they could have.
This is
they could have done things
GAO.
better.
Go to the report. It's government accountability that says, but almost three times.
No one doubts that there was an effort.
Let me give you the numbers. The first, because I came with receipts today. First 9 days after Harvey, immediate response. After Harvey, 5.1 million meals. After Irma, 10.9 million meals. After Maria, 1.6 million meals.
Within what time frame, though?
9 days.
Yeah.
That's when people were dying. That's when people were dying. They were without electricity. They were without air conditioning. They couldn't hook up their oxygen machines. They couldn't refrigerate their insulin. Listen, in Florida, we had 12 old people die in a nursing home because there was no air conditioning. It was Florida. So the amount of people that died in Puerto Rico because there wasn't preparation, because we didn't help immediately, because we didn't evacuate people, we didn't get the military hospitals there to get people out.
I talked to folks who were on the ground, who are still on the ground there. The ports were crushed. Roads were down. You couldn't get things in. Airports are closed. It was a catastrophic disaster like no one has ever seen.
Pitbull was sending his airplane in to evacuate people.
But here's the thing. No one's doubting that the recovery effort was incredibly difficult. What's going on is the president is doubting the death toll.